So, ladies and gentlemen, we move on to our guest of honor special talk. Professor Philip Kotler is known around the world as the father of modern marketing. He's hailed as the world's foremost expert on the strategic practice of marketing. For over 50 years, he's taught at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, and has significantly contributed to Kellogg's success through his many years of research and teaching there. His book, Marketing Management, is widely recognized as the most authoritative textbook on marketing around the world, and he's known for popularizing the definition of the marketing mix. He's been lecturing many companies about how to apply sound economic and marketing science principles to increase their competitiveness. He's also advised governments on how to develop and position the skill sets and resources of their companies for global competition. He is really quite literally a living legend in modern marketing. He's significantly contributed to the understanding and the appreciation of marketing's potential to improve the world. It gives me enormous pleasure to invite our distinguished guest of honor, Professor Philip Kotler, to deliver and indeed to rise to the challenge of delivering a special talk on challenges in corporate governance while focusing on the future boards in a VUCA world, a world of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Professor Kotler is joining us from Florida. It's a great pleasure to have you with us. And at the IOD, we're delighted to extend a warm welcome to you. Over to Professor Kotler.
Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me. And Graham, thank you so much for your introduction. And I also want to thank Suhail for marvelous humanistic ideas. I can spot a humanist anytime, and I am one. I wrote a book called My Life as a Humanist. You can join with me in that view. Well, I am so pleased to be able to talk to the IOD people about directors. And I want to start with two experiences before I do the normal move to a set of slides. The first experience was the one that General Motors had with its board of directors. General Motors hired a company called EDS, Electronic Data Services or Systems, to help them move into a more electronic stage. It wasn't yet digital, but it was electronic. And in hiring EDS, they put on their board the founder of EDS, Mr. Perot. And then they regretted it ever since. In other words, yes, Perot is part of the future, and he's helping General Motors move into the future. But he's also an ornery person. He's too independent. He sits at the board meeting and he says, you know, gentlemen, let's admit it. We don't make the best cars in the world. We should. Well, he kept haranguing the board meetings over this fact, and they finally said in agreement when he wasn't around, we've got to get rid of him. And they told him that, please, if you will help move off the board and say nothing about it, we will, there's $10 million we owe you, and that's at stake. So just don't talk about why you're leaving the board, and we'll be both better off. Well, Perot isn't that easy a person to work with. So he immediately started to tell the press what the problem was, that GM does not make the best cars in the world. And he went ahead and worked with Fortune magazine to write an article called How I Would Run a Car Company the Right Way. And he gave up the $10 million. That wasn't the issue. This is the man who also ran for president. Anyways, I know you don't really want someone like Perot on your board of directors if you can't keep down his volume of criticism. But you know, you need someone like that. Every good board has to have an activist, if we can use that word, who is trying to open the minds of the other board members. The other experience I want to share with you about good management has to do with my experience with IBM. I was asked by John Akers, the CEO of IBM many years ago, to help IBM get into real marketing, not to confuse sales and marketing. And I did my work on that. And they invited me to attend a board meeting, which is a rare experience. IBM's board consisted of only 13 people. What puzzled me more is that there was only one non-American on the board from Switzerland, a good guy. Here was IBM making most of its money from Japan, and there was no one from Japan on the board, things like that. But I attended the meeting, and it was a 3-day meeting. I didn't say anything at the meeting. I wanted to observe. And they ran it in a way which I have to give them credit for, because every board ought to have a long meeting, even a 3-day meeting, that covers 3 themes. What were the themes? The first day was spent in listening to 3 people invited to talk to them, who were the heads of 3 big customer companies that IBM served. I think one of them was Budweiser, the big beer company. So that day was spent in asking those big customers and their CEOs, how are we doing with you? Well, they got a mouthful. One of the visitors said, yeah, I'm the CEO of X, but every time I try to reach my person at IBM, he's busy. He gets back to me half a day later. And so what that was about is every board should listen to their chief or major customers. Are you satisfied with us? How can we do better? Second day, IBM wants to hear how well they're doing with their branches around the world. They've already heard from their customers, but how are they doing with their branches? One of the largest branches was in Chicago, and it managed all the insurance business and other business in the Chicago region. And the head of that branch, who works for IBM, stood up and he said, gentlemen, thank you for inviting me. I'm not happy with headquarters. Headquarters sometimes says, yes, we'll give you 3 more people for your payroll because you said you need some people, but we hope you're getting 3 accountants. We think that's where you should get your help. He says, no, I want 3 marketers. We are sitting on a mountain of opportunity, and I want marketing people. And I would think that since my head is on the line, leave it to me. If I'm wrong about needing 3 marketers, you will know it, and I will know it badly too. So how about a little decentralization and let our branches decide on what they need in people and in resources? This revelation. The third day was spent by the board listening to the competition. Now, you can't ask your competitors to come to your board meeting, right? Well, they happened to focus on a certain competitor, and they had hired from that competitor one of their important people to work for IBM. In other words, they had working for IBM a person who had worked for the competitor. And they said to the IBM person, would you pretend to be the CEO of the company that we want to know more about? And would you lecture the board on what you're going to do with us? What your plot is against us? Well, the young man said, I'd be happy to do it, gentlemen. So on that day, that young man stands up, looks at the 13 members of the board of IBM and says, "Gentlemen, thank you for inviting me. We are here to bury you. We are here to bury you." By the way, that was something that I think the Russian once said about America, or I forget his name, Khrushchev or so on. But in any case, he went on, he says, "You know, you're so focused on hardware that that's not the future. The future is software." Wow. Well, one of the board members who was strong on hardware said that I don't think he knows what he's talking about. We do so well with hardware. Took a year or two until the next IBM president came along to say, "Boy, did we drag ourselves too long with only hardware. We are a software giant, or will be." Okay, not to make more of this, but that was an interesting thing. Every board should experience first some big customers and how they feel about you. Second, your branches and how they feel about you. Thirdly, who's your real competitor that you worry about, and let him tell you what he's going to do to you. Okay, so much for board stories and how important it is to have the right people on your board who are really ready to talk and be independent. Now, can my slides be shown? Corporations are fortunately changing and re-examining their purposes, goals, and responsibilities. And they have to, because they went through COVID, climate change, social economic headwinds, and now a new war. And even the war has brought about some change. Look at the companies that decided to support the victim, not the aggressor. McDonald's, Starbucks, American Express, closing their operations, losing money, but showing that harm is being done, evil is being done to a country for no good reason. So we won't get into that now, but let me go on to the issues that I'm going to discuss with you. Do you see the 10 challenges, Graham? Graham, are you there?
I am sorry. We're just trying to get the office in India to align your slides with where you're at. I think we need one more slide on, guys. If you can.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
We were doing fine, and then they went back to your title slide. There we go. We've got the 10 challenges in front of us.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to read all of those challenges because we're going to take up each one. And I want to go to the first one. And the first one is as follows. One second. The fact is that I am trying to, what is happening, Graham, is that my slide set, okay, good. Let me see. I think I've got it. And I want to change to the first of the challenges. And I believe I now have your layout. If that's correct, can we go to the next slide? I will use that term. Good. Yes. All right. The first issue. Now, I'm not going to cover all issues that boards face, just those that I think are interesting and important. So the question is, should your company be shareholder or stakeholder driven? And this is now everywhere, the question. Now, I want to say that a company that is shareholder driven, and most companies are and were and want to continue to be, namely they're getting support and money from the shareholders, and they think that the job of a company is to pay back for all the help the money has done for this company, to pay back the shareholders. And so that means in such a company, there's two groups that are important. Well, who are they? Customers and shareholders. The company is about satisfying those two groups. A stakeholder view is a little different. A stakeholder view says, you know, we make money being a team. We play as a team. And any weakness in our team has to be corrected. And of course, it will not be a weakness if everyone is rewarded who has contributed and created our profitability. So let's go to Unilever. And I am an admirer of Paul Pullman, who ran Unilever for 10 years and brought the company's money making from $30 billion to $60 billion in 10 years. And when he was asked who his stakeholders are, he named 7. He says, I have 7 stakeholders. In fact, I'm going to read the list. Consumers, because some are not yet customers. Consumers, customers, business partners like the employees primarily, suppliers, agencies, communities are a customer, the planet is a customer, and who did he list last? It was a laugh because he listed last the shareholders. They joked about it at Unilever that he made them last in considering how to make the company successful. So I believe we have enough evidence that companies that switch from being mostly concerned about the shareholders' welfare to rewarding all the stakeholders outperform those who stay shareholder oriented, and that shareholder companies will become mainstream without having the time to present the evidence on that. Let's go to the second slide. Would you please turn to the second slide? Good. The planet is warming up so much that I have to talk about climate change and what it means to your company. The greenhouse gases are warming the planet, and climate extremes are occurring, like fires and floods and hurricanes, and something I call desertization, you know, making your land parched. And there's a clear need to reduce greenhouse gases, which really is coming primarily from fossil fuel, oil, gas, coal. And our energy mix has to be redone. We must go to renewables like solar and wind. And then we have to do a lot of other things as a company. We have to re-examine our packaging. Our packaging is a big cardboard box, and underneath is a attractive box filled with plastics, and all of that's ending up in the ocean. And we got to examine so much. If we make a new commitment to be decarbonizing, what does it take for a company to decarbonize? It has to examine its how it heats the factory, how it lights the factory, how it ships its products, who it purchases from. Why purchase? Let me tell you the Walmart story. Walmart has a supplier who sends needed goods to Walmart stores, but carries them in fuel inefficient trucks that gas up the economy. And he said to the supplier, you're going to have to drop those trucks. You're getting only 5 miles a gallon on those trucks, and I can't use you as my supplier. So it's not only your company that has to examine the energy mix, the packaging, the shipping. It's all the other parties you deal with. You've got to demand that they decarbonize too. And The new thinking is aim and commit to net zero carbon, net zero. Because right now, the world has heated up already from the pre-industrial time to almost 1.5 centimeters of a rise in our water and so on. We've got to take climate control seriously. And as you start doing that, your costs will go up because you're going to make a lot of investments and changes. The short run cost will go up. The long run cost will go down. You will be more profitable in the long run. So on that question of should you add sustainability to profit making? Yes, it's a balancing act. And try to do it well. So you're more than a for-profit firm. You're for sustainability as well. Next slide. Should the CEOs, and you hire a CEO, come from finance, law, IT, or marketing? Companies are most often headed by finance people with experience in finance. And that is so understandable that I, in my own teaching, always tell my marketing classes, my MBA classes, don't just study marketing and study finance. Finance can be your enemy or your friend. And if you can't show the value, the rate of return on marketing to the finance guys running your company, you're not going to get the budget you want. So nowadays, some companies turn to an IT person for leadership because as we get digital, the old guys don't know the digital. They're not digital natives. And maybe you need someone who can assess with good judgment big bills, big expenditures for new systems and tools coming out of the digital world. So we'll see a search for CEOs who will look like Steve Jobs as the model. But you want a CEO also who understands government, because government's role is growing, and we need a great sensitivity and an anticipatory mindset about what's the next regulation going to be and how will it affect us. Will marketing be the source of a CEO or two? That's a rare event. Well, not never. For example, Starbucks was built and started by Howard Schultz, a die-in-the-wool marketer from beginning to end, and he's doing a fantastic job. I just heard, and some of you may have heard, that the next big business of Starbucks is gas stations. No, I don't mean that they open up at gas stations. I mean that their own Starbucks store will have next to it a electrical box, so that when you drive your electric car and park near Starbucks, you can have your electricity filled while you're having your coffee at Starbucks. So the fueling station will be Starbucks in the future. All right. So marketers may themselves become CEOs, but always give good thought to who's the next CEO. And you know, the rhythm is this. When a good finance person runs the company, and usually with good results, at some point, finance became too much of the logic of the minds of people on the top of the board, and they now need some other mentality to come in, maybe marketing as the mentality. There's a rhythm, because I'll tell you one example that when General Electric, one of our greatest companies, um, was going to choose a successor to Jack Welch, there were 3 or 4 people who were ready to take over the company, General Electric. And I for one always said to a company, if you're looking for someone to hire, get a GE guy. He's run some company within GE, and you'll find the right person there. And it turned out they selected one person to be the next CEO to follow, and the other 3 were disappointed that they weren't selected, and they went to run 3 other companies. One of them went to run Home Depot, another to run maybe Kellogg, I guess, and another to run Boeing. And the fact is, they were really finance people who did not understand the 3 companies that they took over as CEO. In other words, the GE mindset had become so financial that it didn't really fit the needs of the 3 companies that were taken over. So I leave that thought to you. Be careful in choosing who will run the company. Next slide, please. Should companies seek diversity and gender equality? And of course, I am so for that. And we hear it all the time. And I hope as you are part of other companies, you notice that there's enough diversity and women are represented and so on. Now, another thing in that connection is always distinguish the generations that operate in business. The baby boomers are the older guys usually who are CEOs and top managers in the executive suite. They're the baby boomers. They had no digital experience at all, but they're ready to learn about it too. And then there's Generation X. Those are populating all the managers around the jobs. They are not at the CEO level and executive suite. And then there's Y, the millennials, who have been the recent hires, who are in their 20s, digitally oriented and trained people. And that's good. And then, of course, some of your newest hires are centennials. And it's a nice mix. A company without millennials or centennials, I wouldn't buy stock in. But the main point I want to make is every generation has lived through a different set of experiences, and that's why there may be intergenerational breakdowns and tensions. I mean, baby boomers grew up with 2 world wars, and then the music, the social movements were what they were at the time. But the centennials, our centennials, grew up with COVID and climate change and so on. So just the brands that people know about and the movies that they've seen and the songs they've heard are all different. So it's very important to compete well for millennials and centennials as a company, and to realize they're different than the values of the predecessors, because they have 3 values, these younger people. They want a good balance of work, family, and friends. It's not all work. Work stops at 5 o'clock in many cases. Secondly, they grew up with the environmental issues, and they favor environmental protection and government regulation and no polluted air and so on. And thirdly, they even want their company to be concerned with a social problem or 2, like poverty or hunger, homelessness. So they have a different mindset, and they're going to push their company to show that the brand of the company shows a caring for more than just profit making. All right, let's move to the fifth question. The fifth one, please, is what should the board of directors know about marketing? Now, marketing probably doesn't come up that often at board meetings. Many board meetings are profit centered and trying to figure out what happened, but always marketing should come up. But the real question I want to ask is, what does the CEO understand about marketing? And I've determined in meeting a lot of CEOs, there are 4 different types of CEOs understandings of marketing. The first type of CEO was a guy I talked to who ran a company. He says, this 4P business is nonsense. There's only 1P that matters, and that's price. I can sell everything I make if I lower the price enough. True marketing is about price, period. Okay. I think that's very limited. The second type says, yes, we do our marketing planning and we touch 4 Ps. 1P is price. And the first one is product, price, place, and promotion. And we do a good job of planning the 4 Ps. Good. The second question is, the third type of person, CEO, has even another understanding. He accepts the 4 Ps, but he says, I don't go after the whole market. Mass marketing is for Coca-Cola, and I'm not Coca-Cola. I've got to win by finding those segments of the market that I can win. So I do segmentation, targeting, and positioning. Well, that's a good guy to head your company. The CEO who knows the 4 Ps and the STP is wonderful. Then there are a few CEOs, and P&G is one of them, Procter & Gamble, where their leader, Mr. A.G. Lafley, would say, marketing is the whole company. It's now, you could say, hey, Lafley, that doesn't make the finance people feel good or the manufacturing people. And he says, no, they all are doing marketing. They all are trying to make the best products for their customers, and they all have to think that way. All right, so I guess you get the point that I wish that at board meetings and so on, and the person who runs your company has a very good understanding of marketing. Let's go to the next slide, please. What is the purpose of marketing? Well, this is a continuation of a good statement could be made of the following, that to make and sell products and services that are attractive and appropriate for different consumers who have different levels of income and so on. Well, let's shorten that. I like this one. Answer the question, what is marketing? To create, communicate, and deliver value that satisfies a target market's need or desire at a profit. So I use the initials CCDVTP. Create, communicate, and deliver value to a target market at a profit. Okay. Here's another view of a great company. A great company would say marketing also will be innovating new and better products and services for its target markets. And then someone who's more philosophical could say, our real purpose is to enhance the well-being of customers. That's the business we're in. To serve customers so well that their lives are better. Okay, let's go to the next slide. 3 types of marketing. I sometimes talk about 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0 marketing. And if you're a 1.0 company, here's where your mind is. It's on the product that you make, on the economic value that you think you're creating, and on the profits you're making, which is fine. That should be there. If you're a 2.0 company, you really have purpose, not just profits. Your purpose, and it comes from your heart, and you're customer oriented, and you have place a big value on people. You're people oriented, and you are interested in social progress, and that the society becomes a better place for everyone. And if you're really spirited, I can imagine a company which is clearly values driven, concerned deeply about the environment, and wanting to create human happiness. So yeah, there are most companies are 1.0, have a 1.0 mindset. A number have switched to a 2.0 mindset, and that's wonderful. And a few might even still be maybe at a 3.0 mindset. So where is your company now? And if you're at 1.0 and want to move, what steps would you take to move, become a 2.0 company, which is a change in culture? All right, let's now go on to the next slide. Now, this is a whole course in marketing. And I'm just going to say that please be buyer-centered or customer-centered as a company. If you're not, you're product-centered, and you're going to lose to those that are customer-centered. Realize that those people who are going to buy from you, make sure the 4 A's are done well. Don't even do your 4 P's until you know that you've created a lot of awareness of your company. Your products are accessible to the people who you've identified. They are people who accept your product. It's an acceptable product or brand, and they can afford it. So you're going to leave out a lot of people who are not with the money to buy your product, or they're not near where to buy it. Okay, then you do your 4 P's. In the context of the 4 C's, which is 4 factors: company, customers, collaborators, and competitors. You do your STP, and then you engage in a marketing process, which is very well spelled out. All good marketing starts with marketing research, namely knowing the market. And then you go through those steps, which are spelled out, and I won't take any more of your time because this is not a course in marketing. Next slide, please. I often show this because, again, on what is marketing for the CEO and how to think about it, is you're trying to get non-customers to move through 4 stages, actually 5 stages, to become aware of your company, to find your product to be appealing. Then that person will ask some questions. What do you charge? Where do I get your product? And you do a good job of answering those, enough so that the customer tries you. They act, they make a first purchase, and they're satisfied, hopefully. And being satisfied, they buy again and again, and they become a top customer. They become a top customer. They become one of your fans. Okay, now the reason for the other lines here is to just sort out the tools. To work on building awareness, appeal, and answering questions, you're using advertising. To work on making it more interesting to those prospects, you add content to your marketing. To really get to answer real questions and to get people to make their first purchase, use direct marketing. You have their name and you send an email to them about your product, asking them to consider buying it. And then your salespeople go further, especially in business to business marketing. They are now cultivating customers. And then you have set up a lot of distribution channels that make your product appear in more places than in just one place. and so on and so forth. So in a sense, there's an evolution of tools that you use at different stages of the customer's state of being. Is the customer just aware or appealing or acting, and so on and so forth. So let's move on to the next slide. And I just want to remind you that every salesperson has 4 things in mind: to get a new customer, to keep a new customer, to grow the customer, and you do that by upselling. Hey, now the iPhone is in stage number 15 and you only have the 10th version. You upsell and you cross-sell. And then you lost some customers in the meantime to your competitors, so you want to win them back. So those are the 4 mantras of the salesperson. Next slide, please. And this is our 6th question. Will advertising, Salesforce, and retailing grow or decline in importance over time? Big concerns. Advertising was been basically, for big companies, Fortune 500, the development of a 30-second commercial, costing millions of dollars to develop, and then the millions of dollars to buy the promotion time. What did Procter & Gamble do? They took their huge budget, mostly for 30-second commercials, and they took almost 20% of it and put it into digital. And as they used the digital, they found it works some of the time, and some of the digital works and some doesn't. They found how Facebook does work, FaceTime does work, Instagram does work, but certain other tools were less successful. So the picture is here, P&G goes from taking a big chunk of the advertising budget and puts it into digital to find out what works in digital. And after finding out what works in digital, it cuts down digital. You have to do it. It's a lesson. Your answer should not be, I won't even put any money into digital. Your answer is, put a lot of money into digital from the big budget, find what works, and then cut down because you found that some things didn't work. Okay. Now, what about Salesforce? Do we still need salespeople? Let's take, for example, pharmaceutical sales. You hire a very attractive young lady, and she knows her biology, pharmaceuticals. She comes to visit a doctor. She made an appointment to see a doctor, not for herself, but for selling the latest new pharma product. And she's told by the nurse, sorry, the doctor can't see you. The doctor will ask you to leave a sample of your new product and leave a brochure. And if he has any questions after reading them, he will get in touch with you. So the saleswoman, as attractive as she is not able to get to see most of the doctors. She's there to deliver pills, samples, for the to be used by the physician, hopefully. So we have to question Salesforce. There are some companies I've noticed that say, I don't call the salespeople because the information is so complete that I know who to buy from. I don't even have the time to talk to salespeople. I'm not saying this is everywhere. Sales, especially in B2B, business to business, if you're Boeing and you plan to sell to a country X or Y or Z, you got to have people on the ground in those other countries and talking to them, not virtually, not through WebEx or Zoom. Okay, but reconsider how big, what the sales force size should be and how to reward the sales force and so on. I have a whole book on that subject. And then retailing. During COVID, we all stayed home. Many of us did. So we didn't go into stores. In fact, the great benefit was we learned online. More and more people began to get their appliances and even their food delivered by ordering it online using well, in any case, the stores were empty. And the question really is, do we have too many stores? What will make a store successful, especially as we get over the coronavirus? Will people go back to stores? Well, let me say that safely speaking, we will have auto dealerships and they will be visited because people want to see the car and they want to test drive. Yeah. You're going to have furniture stores or furniture showrooms because people don't want to buy an expensive sofa without sitting on it and knowing the material and so on. We're going to need, a lot of shops and stores will be needed to touch the goods, and especially fashion goods. Women want to try on something they're going to buy, and men too. So, but the real question then is your store run well? Is this the kind of store that people walk into and then they walk out of without buying anything? What can you do to improve the in-store experience and make it exciting? What are the colors in your store? What is the training of your salespeople? Are they friendly and creative and interesting people themselves? So yes, retailing has a future. It will come back to life in many ways, but do it well. Let's go to the next slide, slide 7. Which new digital tools will come into greater use and impact? Well, I've listed a lot of them, and in fact, my book called Marketing 5.0 goes into them in more detail. Let me choose a few. Artificial intelligence, AI, is going to be throughout your company, handling shipments, handling returns, but particularly you're going to get into algorithms, and please understand what they are. They're decision-making tools. Let's take a bank. Every bank has an expert banker who knows whether a loan should be made to a borrower or not. He looks over the borrower and he decides yes or no based on the data that he sees in front of him or her. Okay, if that banker expert goes back over his past decisions, he will find that he made some mistakes. He loaned money to some people who never paid it back. So if you could take his judgments and then correct them for what he should have considered more fully, you have created an algorithm that replaces his decision-making with something better. Now the who to make a loan to has incorporated in it his best ideas plus what was assessed to be the important variables that really make a difference. And the same thing is happening with colleges. Colleges now don't just do admissions through an admissions person just judging a person from his background. They turn it over to algorithms, which have much more comprehensive information about whether to admit that person to that college or not. All right, all of this is based on being willing to collect bigger data and to do machine learning, which is a term for applying mathematical tools like cluster analysis and regression analysis to produce learnings about how much weight should be given to different factors in a decision. Okay, and your companies are all now using digital and social media along with regular old-fashioned advertising. You've already done some voice recognition. You maybe even created a woman called Siri or a woman called Alexa who will answer questions on your website. Chatbots means that you've just introduced a new product and it's on the shelves, but people wanting to know about the product, they press a button and it says, "Oh, good, you have some questions for me," and chatbot answers the questions about the new product. So you didn't need a live person repeating the same questions that come up from the new people who first see the product. Please use virtual reality. Don't make a new car and build a new factory to make it. First, design the car on the computer and then cast it in a virtual reality form so that a customer can put on these glasses and see himself or herself going to your dealership, getting into the new car, sitting down, turning the engine on and driving the new car, none of which exist really. It's virtual. But he's asked to vote afterwards. Was that a good car? Was that a good experience? And when the number of votes are very positive, now you can put money into a factory to build that car. Okay. Watch for blockchains and Bitcoins and new currencies. They will affect your business. There's now maybe 1,000 new currencies. They're not yet acceptable by most sellers, but get to understand that we're moving to a whole new reality called blockchains and new currencies. Please do your best in mapping the customer's journey. How did that customer hear about us? Who told him? What media did he see? Were we at the touch points? If we're not at the touch points on the journey he takes, he doesn't hear about our company and he goes to a competitor. So let's map our customer journeys, find out what paths they take to get to us and what the touch points are. And you can talk about some of these other things happening in marketing that are digital tools, but I think in the interest of time, I'm going to go on to the next slide, please, number 8. What is the relation between product development and marketing that the board has to consider? What you're seeing here is a picture of myself and the leader of Fujifilm. Kodak is dead. Why? Because the camera has, the cell phone has a good camera. You don't have to buy film to take pictures. Kodak, which had invented that, but never produced it or made it work, died because the film business died. Fuji had a leader, a great leader, Komori, who said, "We've got so many trade secrets. We learned so much in developing even color film, which take 14 steps, that we have a treasure of ideas that can be turned into products." And you know, Fujifilm now is bigger than it was before. And it's in not only image making, in medicine, medical products, skincare, Fujifilm. So the real question is this: do you have a good relationship in your company between the innovators, or we call them product development people, and the marketers? Innovators are masters of the possible, but they're often not good at the valuable. It takes marketers to say whether the possible is really going to be of value to any customers. So here's the thing. In the old days, when a company developed a product. It was developed without a marketing person all along the development. In fact, marketing only came in when the product was ready, was already made, be sold. Then the marketer's job is to sell it. But the marketer was not drawn into how to make a better product that would sell better. Well, we've changed that, I hope. And our book on that subject called Never Stop. By the way, that's the motto of Fujifilm, never stop. In our book, we describe how marketing and innovation has to work together all the time. Let's go to number 9 now. Should company brands take a stand on public issues? Now, normally, your brand is simply information about your product and its performance and its price and where to get it. But you know, with the environment, with COVID, with climate change, maybe your brand should take on more meaning about caring. In fact, we wrote a whole book called Brand Activism. Again, the word activism, from a purpose to action. In other words, your brand has to have meaning that clicks with the customer. Oh, that's a company I like. They care more than about profit making only. They're practicing sustainability and so on. Now, let me say this is not a new thing, because let's go to the next slide. Here is a list of companies that do have causes beyond the initial one of selling their product and making some money. And I'm drawing this from my book, Corporate Social Responsibility, where we studied 45 companies. Kraft, which makes cheeses, knows that obesity is a bad problem in the United States. People eat a lot of things that are fattening, and Kraft makes fattening product. They've got to think carefully about how to reduce obesity. And Avon sells a lot of things to women, a lot of nice things and goods. And women are concerned with the problem of breast cancer. And Avon has raised money, millions and millions, to help researchers in that field of research. So does your company have any cause? Now, of course, Coca-Cola has not listed right there, but and Pepsi-Cola is listed. Pepsi-Cola, water. Without water, you can't make Pepsi-Cola or Coca-Cola. So those companies making those products, they are investing huge amounts of money to conserve water and the quality of water and so on. So yes, smart companies have a higher cause. Let's move on to the next one. This is the last question. How can a company be creative and innovative? And I want to say there are 4 things to make sure of as a board member when you raise questions at the board. How creative, this question wouldn't come up at Toyota. Toyota, so creative. It wouldn't come up at 3M Company. It's in there at Toyota, and I've been there so many times. Every worker is thinking on how to get rid of his job because he can do it better, faster, or the job isn't even essential. They're always attuned to trying to make things better. Every day, it's called Kaizen. How to improve every time, all the time. Okay, so hire employees. Make sure some of the people you're hiring are people who are exciting. They have new ideas. They can think out of the box. Secondly, celebrate creative ideas that came from your employees. Don't just get the ideas and maybe give them a bonus. Celebrate them for the ideas that they brought to the company. 3, invite customers to offer ideas. Now, Starbucks, again, new system. When you go into Starbucks, there's a place where you can type in or put in a piece of paper about some idea you have that would make Starbucks better for you as a customer. And fourth, just by diversifying the board members, you're likely to have new sources of ideas for your company. Next slide, please. I use this slide because I wrote a book called H2H Marketing. What does that stand for? Human to human. We're in the person-to-person business and so on. And I want to describe, keep clicking on this, the three types of bad marketing. What are they? Unethical marketing, wasteful marketing, and inane marketing, which is silly marketing that didn't do you any good. What you want is H2H marketing. And the next slide, which I think is the last slide. Well, it's next to the last slide. Some summary. Buyers will select the best brands in the future, without needing much help from advertising or salespeople, because marketing success will depend mainly on smart pricing, strong branding, and owning dominant channel positions. Watch for that. Marketing creativity will be crucial. As a matter of fact, you have a lot of people in a company who are very good professional marketers. That is, they are able to sell the goods you have produced. That's not enough. You want entrepreneurial marketers, those who are coming up with new things, ideas of new things to market. So we want to add entrepreneurial marketers to the professional marketers. Third, marketers will make use of customer journey mapping and touch point marketing and more work with personas and content and influencers, things I didn't get into without having the time to. Fourth, marketers will use virtual reality to gauge buyers' interest in possible future products before actually the company making those products. Marketers will use neuroscience to identify the best stimuli. In other words, yes, you may have hired a sociologist or a psychologist. Watch for a neuroscientist. They are people who have studied the human brain, and they can add value to your programs, your marketing programs, and make more use of predictive analytics and machine learning to identify and convert the best prospects. I think we're ready for my last slide. Within 5 years, if you're in the same business you are in now, you're going to be out of business. Graham, that's my message for my listeners and my directors, and thank you very much for the invitation to share this. I think we're going to have some questions too.
Thank you so much, Philip. You describe yourself as a humanist, which I resonate with too. As Professor King highlighted earlier, organizations are inanimate. It's the people that are working within them that make the decisions, that do things that are constructive and destructive. I think you've just delivered an absolutely amazing Marketing 101 by highlighting the real people that are, and the human history that's behind so many of the organizations that we look to as role models and as case studies. So thank you so much. The chat line is fascinating. The people that are praising the conversation that you've just, or the presentation you've just delivered. We're working to a tight schedule, and
Sure.
And so with the permission of the organisers, I'd like to ask one question.
Sure.
And I'm afraid we're going to have a slight change to the programme. So if you'll bear with me on that one. It's a question about corporate governance. And it relates very much to your question 9 about brand activism and public issues. Back in the 1950s, I think it was, there was a transition in the United States when the anecdote goes, the chairman of General Motors at the time had the audacity to suggest to the president of the United States that he should visit Detroit rather than the other way around, because General Motors was frankly more powerful than the United States president was. Now, whether that's true or not, individuals' fortunes go up and down and so on. But at the moment, we're actually seeing two multinationals in Russia refusing to withdraw their operations at the request of governments and the United Nations. And we've got a lot of organizations where they are frankly bigger and more powerful than even national economies. That means that the marketing professionals wield enormous power because they are dictating the values and the beliefs and so on of their market. I was just wondering if you could sort of share any thoughts on how that marketing profession should be regulated, behave, encouraged to adopt different values.
Wonderful question. And getting back to the early part of your question, what happened at General Motors is the head of General Motors says, what's good for General Motors is good for America. In other words, it's like, again, the company has well defined what they're doing the right thing for the country and so on. So you're asking about how companies ought to react in a political world, a world that has become very political and so on. You know, I had no time to say this, but I'm reading a book now called, oh God, I forgot the title. It has to do with the question of income distribution. Oh, it goes this way. We are all interested in economic growth. It's a maxim of capitalism. We must get 3%, 4% growth because it means more jobs, and we want to have no unemployment if possible. Everyone should have a job. So economic growth is just normal. Well, we've had in advanced countries a lot of growth, but it wasn't distributed well enough. It wasn't distributed because the problem that is being looked at about capitalism is a beautiful system for making the rich richer. It does a beautiful job because, especially when it's shareholder capitalism, not stakeholder capitalism, it's very evident that wages have not caught up at all with, so I'm working for a company, therefore, that is to make the rich richer, but not to change my salary as a worker. So I think we have to spend much more time as companies going for a fairer income distribution, which will make the economy, the companies grow faster because there will be more money, more people with money to make more demand for goods. However, the downside is that means more climate problems and more climate warmth. We have a real problem here as to what side do we take. Are we for economic growth, unregulated, continuous economic growth, or are we going to choose, can we balance that with having good climate? And then how do we get the United Nations, which was set up to solve problems like the one we're having now, but never given the forces, the military power to discipline a criminal who is running a country? So that opens up a whole can of thinking. And I hope your board members, that members of all boards, go beyond the normal questions of did the company do well, but raise the question which you're raising. What should the company's voice be and responsibilities be about what's happening in society too? Okay.
Thank you very much. This goes down as one of those tipping point days in my life when I've had somebody like yourself and I've been able to ask a direct question to. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
The appreciative comments in the chat area, it's got to be the longest list that I have ever seen in an IOD conference online. So many people have appreciated what you've had to say. If this was a face-to-face event, I am absolutely certain that you would be receiving a standing ovation at the moment. So thank you so much.
Well, I'll take a leave, and thank you, Graham, so much for
the
invitation. It means a lot to me too. Thank you. I'll say goodbye.